WOC family, Lexima here, the founder of Women on Change and the Lead and Earn program, where we are inspiring you to lead and earn your world, your change, whatever it is, wherever it is. So today's video is going to be about how do you challenge yourself to conquer self-worth, to support your child or your family, right? There's so many single parents out there. So how do you do that? Again, I believe regardless if you have a child, if you have two, there's always another. There's always that child that's inside of you. So if you have a child outside of you, the one you birth, as I said earlier, now there are three of you because there's that child inside of you. And if that child isn't part of your whole, right? If that child is buried somewhere or somewhere in your energy that she could never be herself or himself, it's always, or however you identify as, it's always going to be a challenge for all three of you in that relationship, right? It's a relationship essentially. So we'll explore two ways that you do this. And I would say before I dive into that is to make sure that I believe that everyone, starting as early as possible, should have a vision for themselves. And some parents try to do this in so many ways, whether it's through church, certain family values, you name it, it exists. I think the difference is, does it exist from outside versus from inside? And too often what we find is we model what we find, whether it's coming from family or outside of out there. But if that comes from within us, it's quite different. And I think this is where children and families are struggling so much, particularly those who don't know, they're lost because they don't know their identity. And parents are no different because they, as I said, there are these little children inside of these grown people that we see, and we're thinking, how could they do certain things? But there's common sense, right? And too often these folks don't have that because it wasn't part of that upbringing, or it's not, they have no identity. Okay, let's put it that way. So, for example, growing up as a kid in a culture, what I call silent culture, you don't express feelings. You don't, unless, you are asked certain things. You don't have the power to do that. And me, as this kid I was always called the smart mouth one in my family, or at least that's what my mom would call me. I would get in trouble, whether it's getting my ears twisted, my lips twisted, because I would speak my mind, right? When you're suppressed as a child coming from an environment or home, wherever, to experience these things, you're going to feel a certain way. It's just the truth. So having that suppressed early on, guess what happens? Anger. Anger builds up, right? But which never got to express up to a certain way. And as someone shared with me before, I met this guy, his last name, Mr. Angry was his last name. He goes to empower young men. And I met Mr. Angry, and he said to me, until you get so angry about something, you won't do anything about it. And I thought, oh, I actually come to learn that there's some truth to that. So my core, at least one of my things that at least I've learned so far from me is my ability to keep learning is so essential. So growth as a value is important. And that's different for everybody, whatever that is. To me, growth could be, I have I like to discover new ways, new things, new places. That's a thing for me. It brings a certain joy. It helps me keep this hope alive, I suppose. But that wasn't always something that I was allowed to experience as a kid, right? So as an adult, I got to learn how that affected me and why I was the way that I turn out to be, why I'm the way I am. Of course, it's going to change. Of course, there are other things too, like integrity is up here, right? So I try to do everything I can to make sure that I am the model for that. I don't do it for anybody, I do it for me. And so typically people around me who's going to try to do otherwise, they're going to learn that's not my style. So I either walk away or they fall off. Okay. So what are the two ways that you can actually find your self-worth? Go conquer it, because it's there. How do you, you know, seize that power? All right. And then help your children do it. You have to create room where you can be you. All right. And if you can't do that for yourself, you're not going to be able to do it for your child. So if you are Catholic, you want your children to grow up in the Catholic Church and never expose them to anything else, guess what? Guess what? As long they're going to get that, but they may not be happy with it. And you have to, and they're not going to be happy, right? Because you're forcing them to be something or accept something that isn't theirs. Or whether it's the way you think about certain challenges, until you actually understand that there are other ways, you're not going to be able to accept that. So you have to be able to accept and let go at the same time, right? So I had to let go that, hey, this is the world that I come from, but it's not me. Or this is the world my parents come from, that's them, right? Or my siblings and so forth. The people I'm around, I have to accept that's who they are. And then be okay with it, because I have to do it for me. But until I can do it for me, it's not going to work. And this is the challenge that children are experiencing. Parents want them to go to school and do well, but parents can't read. I mean, like, mom, dad, learn to read and write, and then help me be motivated to do it. So parents, sell they spend so much money to get their kids the best education, which is great, but yet cannot trust these children with that same amount of power, right? They give to somebody else to help their children, but yet whether it's a coach, whether it's a professor, whether it's a banker, but yet they cannot trust that child with that power to find who they are. So two things. Find what makes you happy. Once you find what makes you happy, you're going to let other people find what makes them happy. And as I said, I was a parent to 5 child. My job was to make sure that I keep the house in order, keep everything in order. And I did a darn job at that. And what happens? I didn't know who I was. I had kids that I didn't, like, what the heck? But there's lessons in everything. And I had to learn why, because I had a gift. And they saw it early. My parents saw it early. They seized on it. They just didn't give me the opportunity, or they didn't know how to give me the opportunity and room to find what that gift was. But I spent time. I think I'm getting there. All right? 2, are you doing it, whatever you're doing, to make you happy? Are you doing it for X? Or are you doing it for X? Find out why. Like, I understand now why I enjoy doing what I'm doing right now. I get joy out of it. I actually help, and I like helping people, right? But I had to go through a process, whether it's being parentified, giving my time to people that didn't respect me. I had to go through that. But imagine if I had to keep going and being bitter and doing it and not understanding it. It would harm, especially if I had kids, it would harm them. And I don't want to say kids, because you have people around you who you care about. It affects them, right? And sometimes you have to go cocoon to know and find who you are. And that's okay too. It's an investment that's worth it. And so far, what I've learned is the best investment that I've done. It's not all the things that I've experienced out there, but it's the time that I've given myself to really dive in deeper and understand that little girl that was inside of me that couldn't wait to find out what this world is all about. And I'm excited to be able to share these things and continue to do them with you in hope that I can help you and your family see things that I have been able to see because I've been in these communities and feel blessed to be able to continue to be part of them. Until then, I wish this note finds you well and you're taking your power to lead and earn change for you and your family. Cheers.